bringing you key insights, tips, and advice from the brightest minds in the Canadian franchise industry. This is the Franchise Canada Chats podcast. I'm Gary Prenovo, your host of the Franchise Canada Chats podcast, where we take you into the world of franchising. Season 7 of Franchise Canada Chats will feature interviews with franchisees, franchisors, and industry leaders sharing key insights and expert advice on navigating challenges on their path to success. Franchise Canada Chats is brought to you by FranNet, Canada's franchise matchmaking experts. At FranNet, we help you to build your optimum business model. Then we introduce you to well-suited franchise options. Then, most importantly, we coach you through all aspects of your research so that you can arrive at an informed and defensible yes or no decision.
Steve Geddes is a Fibrenew franchisee from Kelowna. He's within his first 3 years of a business that he started as an underdeveloped resale. Within 1 year, he grew out of his shop and had to purchase a bigger one. And at the beginning of his third year, he hit 10 employees, and he's had an incredible retention program for those employees on top of being Fibrenew's top business builder. What's really cool is at the International Franchise Association annual conference in Las Vegas at the end of February this year, Steve was awarded the Franchisee of the Year of Fibrenew. We're very excited today to talk to Steve. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been in furniture most of my life, representing some commercial furniture companies, and then had a sales agency for quite a few years in Calgary, selling healthcare, hospitality, and really love furniture. I have always been in that. Happened to be in the States one day working and was surfing news, found a guy in the States talking about life after sports world and looking for a franchise. And he was talking about Fibrenew. So I quickly found them online, sent a message to Fibrenew saying I was interested in knowing a little bit more about it. Seemed like a good fit with what I was doing. With my sales background and selling, I had an installation and staging company as well. So I did hands-on. I had 6 to 8 guys working, installing furniture, doing moves in, moves out. So a furniture repair business seemed like it would be a good fit. So I inquired if there was a franchise available in Calgary. There was not. Found out that Calgary was their head office. Didn't even know that, living in Calgary. But we started talking about opportunities. I was working some in Phoenix at the time. There was one there. My wife's from the Okanagan, so I threw out, "Hey, is there anything available in Kelowna?" There happened to be a franchisee out here looking to sell, so we started going down that route. We had a 5-year plan to perhaps move back to the Okanagan, closer to my wife's family. Within a year, we had bought the franchise and moved to Kelowna.
Wonderful. And you mentioned part of the strategy was maybe build it and get your son involved. Tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely. So my son went through training with me at headquarters at the training center in Calgary. The plan was, I'm a sales guy. I wanted to get back into selling some. And so my thought was it was a good legacy opportunity. We could work it together for a while, and then I could kind of hand the reins over to him, and he would take over, and I would sort of manage it from a distance and get back into selling furniture. COVID happened, as we all know. The pandemic hit. They decided for personal reasons to move back to the East Coast, where we're originally from. So I said, well, I've got an opportunity here. It's presented itself. Let's grow it, see how big we can get it, and do what I believed there was an opportunity in Fibrenew, not just to be a mobile service, but I had done my homework in not only in this territory, but being in furniture for many, many years. The opportunity to add upholstery, to add more services than just a mobile service really attracted to me. So I had the shop, I had bought it already, wanting to work out of there. And so we just decided to go after it. My wife works with me as well. She does more of the back end and the financial part of it. But we said, let's see what we can make of this. And I do know how to grow. I do know how to sell. So I knew that part was going to be taken care of if I could find good people and staff to start working. And we started growing it, and we've had a blast. And it's been hyper growth even through the pandemic. The beauty of Fibrenew is it really is recession proof, and there's opportunities repairs, in any industry and in any sort of type of environment. So we started growing.
Very cool. And there's an important lesson for our listeners in that when you talk about you started this with one of the intentions of having your son involved. So for people who are thinking about family businesses, you want to make sure that when you buy a business, you can execute it without the family members that you hope will be involved. Especially the younger the kids are, the more likely their life plans might change, and then it's left to you. So have those important discussions with the family before you buy something, or know for sure that if things do change with the family, that you can carry it. And I want to come back to one of the other things you said there, Steve. And in the pre-discussion, you shared that you focused on selling versus being the person in the vehicle, being the technician on the doing the work itself. So tell us a little bit about the decisions around scaling the business and how you've been able to do that, because that's important for our listeners, that focusing on scaling the business, growing, working on the business versus working in the business, which is a very common challenge a lot of franchisees face. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, thank you. The first part, absolutely right about the family. I think in hindsight, my passion is in furniture. It wasn't necessarily his, and everything happens for a reason, and I was okay with that. And I wasn't sure if he was going to be in it for a year or 10, 20 years. So I always had in the back of my mind, another strategy, and then we implemented it and went. And as for the second part of how how it was going to work, and what was the second part of what you wanted me to key on?
Well, just focusing on scaling the business, working on versus working in.
Right. I talked to a lot of other Fibrenew franchises about this, and you always hear that I'm too busy to go out and sell. My background has always been in selling, and I believe that you have to keep selling. You have to fill that funnel all the time, and you always have to be looking for new business. The other part I get a kickback on a lot is I can't afford to bring on more staff because that's a huge expense. I always turn that around and say it's not an expense; it's revenue. It's revenue generation. So every time I look at bringing on a staff member, I've got 2 new ones starting today. It's been a busy day here already in the shop. That's revenue generation. They're going to add to the bottom line. And yes, there's a cost. Labor is probably the biggest cost of most of our companies, but the revenue that I can add to that. So I always look at it as an opportunity. And when I schedule out my week and look at whether I'm going to be, full time in the business or part time, I have to allow every week for myself or one of my managers to be selling, to increasing our market share with our existing customers, dropping off and making sure we're cold calling. We have to allow for that every week, or there's going to be downturns. I don't want my business to look like this. I want to have a smooth, steady line, hopefully always going up. And when I talk to other franchises, it's like you have to find the time to do that. You can't use the excuse that you're too busy. Now, the other part that's important with Fibrenew, I know it is for other ones, even though I want to grow and I want to be the sales guy and scale it up, I have to know my business. So I tell any, franchise that's looking into Fibrenew or anything else, you have to work the business, you have to understand it. So for the first 6 months, I was on the tools every day. I had to understand. I learned that way back in my early furniture days when I was selling furniture. They put me in the trucks installing furniture for the first couple of weeks so I'd understand it. I believe you have to know your business. You have to understand your product if you're going to sell it and if you're going to scale your business up. So that's always been important to me, that I still get on the tools if need be, if I have to jump in and do it, because I spent those first 6 months, at least 6 months, on it full time, understanding the business first, and then I can grow it from there.
I think that's important. When a new franchisee buys the business, they have to learn it. And it's really important following the franchisor systems processes, so that they can learn what the value proposition is, what what all the different elements are, and where the challenges are that they have to lead and manage around. I want to come back to what you said about when you're talking to other franchisees and they either have an excuse of I'm too busy or whatever. I've seen with a lot of franchisees over the years that as they're going along, they have a certain revenue line and they think of the profit they're earning from that revenue, and they think, gee, if I hire somebody, if I go off the tools, then it's just going to go up like the revenue is going to go straight. But what happens is the profit's got to take a dip because while you're training that new person, it's a short-term investment while you're taking less income for a longer term. Now, once they're up to speed, now I can go out and sell more, and it gives you more of your time to execute the sales strategy. I think that's what it sounds like you're doing.
So true. And I do talk about that you have to, you have to build it to the point that you have a little bit of cash flow and you have a little bit to fall back on while you do train somebody. At Fibrenew, there's a great training program for any new techs or anything to go through. It's 2 weeks, but really you're, that 4 to 6 weeks before you're comfortable being out there on your own. So absolutely, there's a little bit of a pause as you get somebody trained, if you can't find somebody with industry experience, and again, depending on what industry you're in, I've tried to find some people with background in furniture or detailing or something like this. So the curve is much smaller, but you still do have that training time where you're not going to be full throttle on income for sure.
Okay, I want to come back to the labor, but let's back up for a bit and just talk to our listeners about because a lot of them haven't bought a franchise yet and they're trying to figure it out, right? So, how does purchasing an existing franchise, an existing operation, from your perspective, differ from buying a brand new one?
Yeah, that's a good question because there was some opportunities, like I said, in Phoenix and everything to buy a new territory or buy an existing one. This happened that it was there. The beauty of an existing territory is you have a book of business you're buying, or you've got existing customers, and you don't have to start from ground zero or no sales. I went through training with a couple of guys that were buying brand new territories, and they were overwhelmed with the thought of they're going to land in their territory next Monday and they have nothing. Great opportunity to train and practice, great opportunity to sell, but no business. So we bought a franchise that did have some business, had some good customers, that was just underdeveloped and undernurtured. The past franchisee was very comfortable with a certain amount of work, and he was okay with that. I knew that there was a huge opportunity in this territory to grow it, but at least I bought some business. Now that costs, there's a dollar associated with that as well, right? So the price to buy that business is going to be more than an open franchise, we'll call it. So you have to weigh those two odds. How comfortable are you growing from zero, or do you want to have some cash flow right away that you can start working on? The opportunity presented itself that it was here, and I liked it.
And not all markets have existing resales available.
Correct.
So I think you paid a premium for that existing business. New owners should be part of their business plan, their financial plan. How much money do I have to invest in initial marketing to build that momentum? How much time do I have to go out and engage the community? And I mean serving the community, whether it's networking or other elements, to tell their own story, right? Those are important components of the research. When you bought that, once you got in and you had it up and running, was there anything really glaringly evident that you needed to focus on to change and improve compared to the previous owner, or was it, hey, this is just it's under nurtured and I have to really put some energy into that?
What I found, I think, is a failure is a strong word, but I think it's very common out there with owner operators, single individuals that get very busy or complacent doing what they're doing, and they don't try to grow the business, and therefore they don't answer calls. One of the things that I was kind of shocked at was I would return phone calls and emails and quotes and get back to them the same day. A lot of people out here were shocked that I was getting back to them, and I think the former was very complacent and happy with what he had, and he didn't do any of that. So really building that service market. I've built my entire career on servicing and keeping my network happy long term. Whatever I'm selling, I have that network that I can always go to because they know I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. And that was the part that was underdeveloped. It was growing that expectation of service and that it was here for you. You're always going to get it from us. We're going to get back to you. We're going to have a professional quote right away, and really, adding that level of service and stepping it up.
Enjoying the episode so far? Franchise Canada also has bi-monthly newsletters full of franchise opportunities. With Franchise Canada e-news, new content gets sent directly to your inbox, and you can keep up to date on the newest episodes of the Franchise Canada Chats podcast that you're listening to right now. Plus, you get a free subscription to Franchise Canada magazine. Join the 19,000 fellow franchisees, industry leaders, and aspiring entrepreneurs by subscribing at franchisecanada.online. Now, back to the episode. What I hear you're saying is brilliantly delivering on the brand promise. And I think I think we're dealing with the most educated consumer in human history. Doesn't matter what people are buying, doesn't matter what franchise you as listener are thinking about getting. You want to understand what the brand promise is and what is the work you have to do to deliver that brand promise through your people. So online reviews, people know what they want, where they want, how much to pay for it, and they know what experience they want to get. So make sure that the new owner has the ability to do the work that it takes to deliver that brand promise. So you focused on that engagement and stepping up the level of response. You also focused on building those relationships. When you think about the pros and cons of purchasing a resale versus purchasing an existing, or purchasing a new territory, what would you offer as pros and cons for that?
The pros are the brand. So, you're growing something that's been here. Our brand has been in the Okanagan where I'm at for years, and I'm growing that. I'm purchasing that brand. So that's a huge pro. Even if it was underdeveloped, there's still the name recognition out there, and there's something to work on. The con of that would be, if it was severely underserviced and poor service, then you've got you've got a little work to repair some of the damages out there, and try to find that out ahead of time, obviously. And I wasn't living in this market, but we've had property out here and family and everything else, so I had the ability to look into it and try it to see what it was like. The pros of a new market is you get to write your story, and you get to put your own branding on it. You get to decide which markets you're going to go into first. You're going to decide who you're going to go after, how you want to grow it, and what areas that you want to specialize in. So it's really an open page that you get to write your own story, where you've got some existing good and bad. If you're buying an existing one, you have to sort of go with the route that it was already on.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things you said earlier a few minutes ago. You have to pay a premium. So some people might look at, I've got to pay a premium for the existing business as a con. At the same time, you don't have to do that heavy lifting to build that base. So it's both a pro and a con. What is the existing relationships that you're taking over? You have to figure out what is any other clues on additional due diligence you recommend a prospective franchisee do if they're looking at resales?
Do a business plan, do an in-depth dive into the market, a business plan that looks at not just sales and sales opportunity, but networking and future revenue streams that you might get other markets that maybe it's not in right now. Negotiating with the existing franchise that was here at the time. He was fairly open and upfront with me as to what he did and his markets and everything else. Try to have as many of those conversations as possible. Communication and everything is key. But if you can do your homework to try to understand that market, to try to understand some of the customers. I came out here on vacation a few times, and I walked into existing customers and asked, "Hey, what's your Fibrenew relationship like?" And customers were forthcoming that it was a great product and it was a great company to work with. So, and back to that whole brand thing, it's so important to me to build that brand, not just Fibrenew Kelowna. All of my marketing materials, everything just says Fibrenew because I'm building that brand for the neighboring franchise as well. And I'm so big on that we have to keep consistent. We have to build that brand for all of us, not just for my little community.
I'm gonna go two directions there. We'll do one first and then the other. One is so many people when they buy a franchise, they think because they bought into a brand, the customers are just going to come. I'm going to make a statement. I want to see your response to it. I believe that it is never the franchisor's responsibility to deliver customers to the franchisee. I believe instead it's the franchisor's responsibility to deliver systems and process, part of which is the customer generation strategy. How would you respond?
I agree. It is up to me to grow my brand in my market. I've got great support from head office, we'll say, and with training and with resources to help with marketing materials and everything else. It's the onus is on me to get out there and network. And as a small business owner, I have to build my brand in my market, and that's then understanding, if it's going to be the Chamber of Commerce you're going to start at, what other networking groups you may be a part of, but I need to build that brand locally with the support of and the great knowledge of a lot of people that I can rely on to ask questions. But the onus is on me, the franchisee, for sure.
Okay, thank you. And the other is the business plan. I want to come back to the business plan, which you mentioned how important it is to build a business plan. I talk to a lot of bankers and work with a lot of bankers over the years, and a lot of people come in, they've got a wonderful financial spreadsheet. It tells an awesome story how much money they're going to make. And the banks aren't going to do anything with that spreadsheet if the franchise owner can't tell the story behind the numbers. So I suggest things like why the market, why the franchisor, why the franchisee, like why are they aligned? What other components would you say it's important for the owner to be able to tell the story behind the business plan when they go in for the bank?
Yeah, when I looked at my business plan, I looked at obviously financial spreadsheet, and I looked at 1, 3, and 5 years, and where I was going to be with it here. I looked at my competition. I looked at each market. Fibrenew is known for having sort of 6 market segments that we can work in and grow in. So I did a deep dive in each one of those, where the market was, where the market opportunity was. What that made me do is really get a hands-on and a training program set up for the Okanagan, for Kelowna. So I wasn't living here, but I got to know. So I had customer lists in each segment as well. So I went in and I started looking at databases. And so I didn't look at it just as the financial. I looked at it as financial, operational, sales, and marketing, and I broke it down that way. So when I reviewed that and I look at that, I still go back to that and refer to that quite often to see if I'm doing what I thought I would be doing from day one. Now, I blew that out of the water originally because I didn't think we could turn it around as quickly as we did. With the pandemic starting as well, I was, you have that fear for sure, and the fear of the unknown. Lo and behold, it's worked out as it was supposed to, but I still refer back to that to see how I'm doing.
And it's interesting because when telling the story to the bank, it's what it is, why it is, but you also covered the how. What is it? How are you going to generate the business, and how are you going to execute on the operational strategy? You mentioned training, so let's segue into the labor discussion because every business owner these days is struggling with labor.
Mhm.
How much trouble have you had on finding and retaining staff?
Like everybody, it's a challenge some days. I've got some employees here that we just celebrated. I've had it for 3 years. I just celebrated 2 years with one of my staff on Friday. Another one's going to be 3 years. I have had some turnover through COVID, absolutely, for good reasons. And one of the things that one of my mentors said to me years ago, and I still, when you hire somebody, it's never forever. They're going to quit. they're going to pass on. You're going to encourage them to go be successful someplace else, perhaps. So it's never forever, but you have to make it as quality a place and environment as possible so they want to stay. And so we do a lot of things with our staff to try to make it a family environment for them. When I'm hiring people, I'm really trying to find and isolate, the person that I want, the details that I want. They don't necessarily have to have experience for instance, at Fibrenew, because that's not, something that's out there like a server in a restaurant that you can transfer over, but they have to have a level of detail. So, for instance, automotive detailers, painters can cross over and be technicians for Fibrenew because they understand color and they have an eye for detail and they know they need to do a fantastic job. So I sort of fine tune it that way, and then we incentivize them when they're here, and not just financially, because I don't think that's everything. One of the things that I've done a lot, and I know Fibrenew wants me to talk about it all the time, is when we do a job at a local restaurant, for instance, if we're doing repairs or reupholstery at a restaurant, we will do, and I'll just throw out a number, say it's a $2,500 invoice. Maybe we'll do, I'll go back to the owner of that restaurant and say, let's do 2,500 in gift cards that I can then use to give and acknowledge my staff. Not only that, as a small business owner, we're going to bring that money back to your restaurants. My staff are going to go in and say, hey, I'm a part of Fibrenew. We did your work. Now we're coming here to spend some money. It's win-win for everybody, but it's also a small token to our staff that they know those are coming, right? They know every month there's some gift cards to be had for different places. And it might be spas, it might be, a nail place, it might be lots of different things. But little things like that are keeping staff around a little bit longer. And I'm an open book. Every Monday we have a staff meeting. We talk about the pros and cons. We talk about the fact that we're going to make mistakes, but nothing goes out that door if you wouldn't want to pay for it yourself. So let's make sure we make mistakes and then we fix them. We accept that and then we keep going.
I mentioned at the beginning that you were franchisee of the year last year, so you're in that top 1%. And I just finished writing a book. It's coming out in March. It's called The Unstoppable Franchisee. That's what it looks like. And why I'm bringing it up now is because what you talked about just now is around staff. One of my drivers is on, leading your people. The vast majority of the top franchisees that I interviewed for the book, they treat their staff as their most important repeat customer. Whereas a middle and underperforming franchisees treat their staff as a resource to be exploited. And clearly you've recognized how important it is that, hey, while you're here, I'm going to contribute, I'm going to add value to you. I'm going to help you do as good as you can. And you're important. It's not just you're producing X for me. So that's great to hear. The other thing that you talk about is your Monday morning staff meeting. Without exception, every single top franchisee had regular, sometimes daily, but at least weekly meetings with their team on what's going on. And the transparency that I talked to, some of the people were incredibly transparent. So kudos to you on doing that. When we talk about what's next for your business, you're starting to look at scaling up or doing things differently, working with the franchisor on training, other things. Talk to us a little bit about that interdependence that you're working on with Fibrenew, please.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm trying to do with my company here is not step away, but have great people in place that can manage it and run it as if I'm not here. And I do work with my staff on make those decisions. They have ownership in decisions, so that if Steve's here or not here, it's going to run the same. That allows me to free myself up. And one of the things that I love to do and my passion is scaling businesses, is growing companies, is growing brands and market share. So with corporate now, we'll call it, I'm starting to work with Fibrenew on coaching and mentoring some franchisees across North America that want to grow from owner operator to take that next level, to add other segments of their company. So maybe add upholstery and shop, brick and mortar and storefronts, and to do that and what that looks like. And from somebody that's grown up in a in a sales mentality where I got to go hunt it and bring it in. Not everybody, not all of our franchisees are the same, right? Some of them are, are veterans. Some of them are, might be IT, that this is a second career for them, and they don't have that same mentality. So, like we talked about earlier, the looking at it as revenue generation instead of just labor costs that you're adding, changing that mindset and start working with some franchises on how do you grow, how do you scale. I love doing that. So I'm excited about, giving some of my knowledge back to the brand to say, this is how it can be done. And we're trying to template some of that right now as to, what you need, and maybe, and you don't go from one employee to 12, right? So how do we get from 1 to 10 to 12? How do you get to 2? That's the biggest jump, right? And then you get that comfort level. Okay, I did it with that. Now I have to replicate it. And so we're trying to template that and work on some modules that'll work for training, Zoom and different things. So wherever they're at, we can work on a model that's going to work for them.
And Fibrenew is hand in hand with you in developing these.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm working with head office to develop these tools.
So the one of the things that I love what I'm hearing is that any good franchisor, best in class franchisors, help their franchisees leverage the intellectual capital of the entire system. It's not just franchisor, I know everything, do as I say. That's what helps you get you started, is follow the system. But once people are up and running, it's the other franchisees who are doing different things, and where a franchisor identifies that pathway or creates the pathway for franchisees to draw on other franchisees to bubble up best practices and to build that. So for the listeners who are assessing their the franchise options, we would highly recommend you explore how well the communication takes place and how well the franchisor promotes that interdependent type of structure for the ongoing learning and development. I love what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, one of the things that Fibrenew does so well that way is help and support new franchisees as they go. You go through training and then you're kind of kicked out and on your own, but you're not on your own. I was on FaceTime, I was on text talking back and forth. So we have a support group. So I would be now part of that support group when you're looking at scaling. But we have furniture and automotive specialists all across North America, and then we've got some key guys that are franchise owners, but they're there to work as support and training as well. And they've set it up so well to kind of split the countries in two and areas, so you've got your time zones covered. They have helped us so much to try to get over those, because as with most things in training, then you hit real life and you're throwing a curveball that I didn't see that last week in training. Now what do I do? Well, you don't have to try to figure it out yourself. You've always got support. They've been so strong that way.
Do you see very often where some of the franchisees who aren't just doing as well, they're afraid to ask, or they're too busy to ask? So it's they that intellectual horsepower is there, but people have to be self-accountable and self-responsible and take advantage of it and take action towards gaining it.
They sure do. And the more that we can work together when we do, whether it be a sales conference with all of us, and to get that comfort level of knowing your peers out there, so that you're not afraid to ask for help when you're running into a corner.
I've got a couple of general questions. When you look back, knowing what you know now, Steve, what was your biggest surprise, your biggest positive surprise? Aha, this is awesome. And your biggest, I got to figure this out surprise.
My biggest surprise probably was, and I say this a lot when I'm talking to prospective franchises or existing ones, I have yet to find the ceiling in any of our markets. I am still in awe every day of how much business is out there if we can find the hours and the manpower and the staff to take it over. We have not hit the ceiling in aviation and marine and all that. So I'm surprised every day that there's no, there's that much business out there if we can find a way to go after it properly. the aha moment, I guess, or the I got to figure this out is the technical side of understanding. There's so many repairs to be done out there. Understanding our products to be able to make sure we're doing them the right way. So that's where the technical, like you really have to have get in there and get your hands dirty at the start to understand that, because the training was phenomenal, but you can't train everything in a few weeks. So you come back to the market and it's like, ooh, that's new. Now what? And so really that part was not overwhelming. I've been handy enough in the past to understand, that I have to get in there and figure it out. But there's so many different repairs out there. There's so many different products to be able to then work your way through that. So that took a few minutes for sure, and it still
Well,
happens. Like I still find stuff that I'm not sure of, so I call one of the other guys at Fibrenew or snap a picture and say, "Hey, has anybody run into this?"
so drawing on that intellectual brain trust, but what I'm hearing is definitely absolutely clearly a growth mindset. There's lots of opportunity there. So I'm going to maximize the opportunity. I'll figure it out as I'm going along. So the learning curve will be up and down, but the focus is on growth and scale. Then from a tracking success, it sounds like you're very clearly goal oriented. And that's part of the team meetings, I would imagine. What about the tracking of success? How important is KPIs and performance tracking to you?
It is important, and we track our reviews, we track our percentages of warranty or re-repairs. I track, how many repairs we're able to do now, or how many calls we're able to do on a weekly basis compared to, when new tech starts. How much business we can flow through here on a regular basis. We track productivity, from new people as you get going, and how quickly you can get up and running. And the beauty of our, with multiple staff, and we're able to turn stuff so much quicker. So we have sort of a head start on our market against any of our competitors. But I want to track, speed versus precision, versus making sure that we're doing the repairs right the first time, not having to go back. So, that matrix and sharing that with my staff is so important, because their knowledge and their understanding is, because they want to get better as well, right? So if we challenge them and put those markers in place, they have something to look forward to as well.
Okay, so clearly that helps with the staff and knowing that their contribution. I'm thinking about before you bought the business and you were looking at how do you figure out the KPIs? Like, how are you going to track, number one, define, then track and measure your progress to that? How much insight did you have to what the KPIs were?
Some, I had there before I came on board, and it's called onboarding at franchise, and you work with head office staff. And you get to talk to, from 7 to 20 franchises out there. You can call them and ask them any question. And they call me now for that as well. So I was able to understand the business pretty good before I jumped in. So that's part of onboarding, as they call it. There was also a drive day. So I got to go with a franchise. I happened to go to with a guy in Red Deer, Sean at the time, and I spent the day with him. So I got to see his business, and he was an open book to me, just like I am now with other, prospective franchisees. So that really helped me understand what the business was and what my models needed to be.
So what advice would you give our listeners who are thinking about buying a franchise? They're getting fairly deep into their journey on identifying the important KPIs that they have to use once they buy their business.
Um, you know, Hopefully you're looking at a franchise that has as much of an open book as possible, and talk to other franchisees, other franchises, maybe in competitive markets, but try to find out as much information as you can about that market and about existing companies that you can.
Okay. Yeah, because I think a lot of people they get overwhelmed by KPIs or knowing your numbers, and they think financial numbers. I'm not an accountant. I don't know the financials. So our advice is understand what the 5 or 6 core metrics are and start with that. And then as you get the business up and running, and that comes from doing their due diligence, talking to existing franchisees as part of their franchise questions. As we wind down here, Steve, what advice would you give to prospective franchisees at this stage? Like they might be looking at multiple options. What are the top 2 or 3 things that they need to walk away from this discussion with?
I talk a lot about perspective in my company. Is be prepared to work hard. We all have to work hard. I get that, but be prepared to work hard, hands on. Get to know your product intimately. Get to know your customers intimately. Don't buy a franchise thinking that you can manage it from afar or manage it from an office. I don't believe small business and franchises are set up that way, and I don't believe you should buy it just for an investment, right? Buy real estate for an investment or something else. If you're buying a franchise, be prepared to be hands-on and work and understand your company and your franchise and your community, in depth, and be prepared for that. Then perhaps you can take a step back, but you have to be hands-on at first. You really can't. I don't believe you can buy these franchises as just an investment. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's passive investment doesn't happen. It's you have to have some degree of hands-on. And there are service businesses where they run full time. The owner hires an experienced a manager for that, but they're managing 15 to 20 hours to get it up and running, sometimes 25 hours. Then they can back off once the business really establishes. What haven't I asked you that you would ask you in the perspective of our audience?
I get asked a lot if I had to do it all over again, especially because my plan is not my reality now. Would I do it again? And my answer has always been yes, I would do it again. I've loved the opportunity. I've loved the challenge. It didn't work out like I thought it was going to, and that's okay, right? It's not the first time in my life things haven't worked out like I had written them down. But would I do it again? Absolutely. I've loved the opportunity to work with Fibrenew. I've loved the opportunity to scale it up and go after it. I've always had this. I've worked with other companies in the past, and I've always had this, this template in my head that I know how to grow. I know how to go after it. And this was just proof in a franchise, because I always worked with manufacturers and a sales agency, which is totally different. I've never gone after a franchise before, and I love it works, and you can do it with a brand that's already out there, and I absolutely would do it again.
It's interesting you picked that question. I worked with a franchise lawyer in the CFA I think it's in the tips for prospective franchisees. There's over 100 questions that franchisees need to ask in the due diligence. And I've always believed that the question you just mentioned is the most important question. When you ask it, when you should be talking to 8 to 10 existing franchisees at a minimum as part of your due diligence. And I always save that for the last question, is knowing what you know now, would you do it again? And why or why not is where the important discussion happens, and really understanding that. Well, is there anything that you're developing your market in Kelowna? Is there anything that you want to share about your business in your market before we close off?
I think we're real proud of the work that we put out here. It's a small market. When I look at the franchises and population across the country and in the States, I do not have a large market. We're 200,000. When all the tourists get here, that's about as big as we are. But we've been able to grow to the largest one in North America because we have had that attitude of let's go out and get the business, and we will figure it out some days. But Kelowna, Fibrenew, I have the Vernon franchise as well. So it's sort of all lumped together now. We do a lot of work. We do a lot of repairs. We do a lot of upholstery. We work with restaurants and boats and automotive. We're close to all the dealers out here, and we do work that we're proud of. That, like I've always said, that we would pay for it ourselves before it goes out. Before we expect a customer to pay for it, we would pay for it ourselves. And the service part of it, and that standing up to our customers, I think, is what we're most proud of. I have I have I have bought some business because we made some mistakes. We're not perfect. We've made some mistakes, and I've always made it right with the customer. So I've always brought that stuff back to our shop. We've made it right, and I've made that clear with my staff as well. We're going to do this right. We made a mistake. We're human. Those things happen. Sometimes they get past us and get out the door, but we're going to make it right. And I think that's what my customers know, that I'll always take care of them, and I'll always make sure that we keep that level up.
You know, I'm literally getting goosebumps on my arms as I listen to that, because what I'm hearing you say, it's not about the brand. The brand is important, but it's not about the brand. It's not about the size of the market. You've got a small market and you're kicking butt over people with very large markets. It's about execution of the business model. And most importantly, this is what gave me goosebumps, Steve. So congratulations. It's about delivering an excellent customer service and excellent customer solution. That's where business excels.
Absolutely. And we may not win it per se when you're looking at a bottom line, or if you're an accountant looking at it, we may not win that customer. We've won that customer because that customer is going to tell that story to 12 people that, Fibrenew and our team had their back. That's more important.
I love hearing your experience come out. Thank you very much for your time today. Here's wishing you continued success. All the very best.
Thank you very much. I love doing this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Franchise Canada Chats. Catch up on every episode of Franchise Canada Chats on SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your audio media. For more franchising resources, including how-to articles, expert advice, franchise success stories, and franchise opportunities, visit franchisecanada.online. Don't forget to subscribe to Franchise Canada e-News while you're there. You can also learn more about franchising at cfa.ca and connect with specific franchise opportunities at lookforafranchise.ca.